Well, to discuss the race to win Ekurhuleni, one of South Africa's budding economic hubs, also plagued with major service delivery issues, we're now joined via Zoom by political analyst Makhosini Mgitywa. Thank you so much. Always good to have you on the program. So, deploying the deputy president to Ekurhuleni, does that give us an indication of just how important the metro is?
Good evening, Peter. I think, the ANC is attaching a lot of importance to metropolitan council. Makes sense, especially in Gauteng. But, when ruling parties start losing power in area. So they lost Tshwane, they lost Johannesburg here in Gauteng, and they were just able to hold on to Ekurhuleni by a very, very small majority when considering that they formed the ANC led the coalition government. So I think they see the metros as very important. And I think it's a morale booster for them to keep the metros. I mean, I don't think that the ruling party likes a situation where, the legislative capital of the country is under the DA, the administrative capital of the country is under DA government. And at some point, the economic hub of South Africa was under, led by a DA coalition. So I don't think that they like that. I think they will deploy a lot of resources and a lot of time and personalities within the ruling ANC to make sure that they canvass votes as much as possible in those metros. And I'm sure that they would want to retain Ekurhuleni and retain it with a majority this time around. Peter?
It wasn't the easiest and the most comfortable of meetings that the Deputy President had in Ekurhuleni. Was that to be expected? I mean, how angry are people or disappointed about issues like service delivery and power?
Look, incidentally, as I'm talking to you now, I'm in Ekurhuleni. I live in Ekurhuleni. I was born in Ekurhuleni. Just this afternoon, I went to visit a cousin of mine in Katlehong, where I was born. I must say that I was very disappointed to see, the number of, just broken sewer pipes and raw sewage spewing over and people having to deal with that. So I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that it happens only in, Ekurhuleni or only in ANC-led municipalities. It happens in other places as well. But, I think this time around, people are much more vocal. They are coming out to say this is what they don't like. And I think, in a sense, I don't see it as a terribly negative thing for the ANC or for the deputy president that people said those things to him. I think you ought to worry when people don't say anything, when people are dissatisfied, but they're not saying anything to you if you're campaigning. But when they voice, their grievances and tell you this is what they're unhappy about, I think in their minds they believe that you can do something about it or you're going to do something about it. And I don't think that we can read too much into that. I don't think that tells us that the fortunes of the ANC are going to be, that much negatively affected. Considering the fact that most of the people who form the ANC voter base do not see any alternative outside of the ANC. But we'll have to wait and see how people vote, because it's one thing to have a support base, people wanting you to be the government, but it's another thing to get those people to come out of their homes on Monday to go out and vote. Because that's what determines an election. It's not the support that you have, it's how many people vote for you. So the party that will do well, or parties that will do well, are parties that are going to be able to energize their base to get them out to vote. They are working against the pandemic. Many people would still be wary to go out, maybe those who are not vaccinated and other categories of people. So the parties that are going to be able to get people out to vote are the parties that are going to do well. And I think the ANC ANC is doing its bit in that regard to bring in heavy hitters into all these places so that they can go out and energize people essentially for them to go out and vote. Peter?
Which are the parties to watch in Ekurhuleni? ANC, yes, absolutely, because we know they have significant support and they may be again the leading party to a coalition, we don't know. But who else might be in the mix this time around? And do the independent candidates cause some kind of concern for the frontrunners?
I think the ANC will undoubtedly emerge with a plurality of votes. Whether it will have an outright majority, that remains to be seen. But I think definitely it will have the plurality of votes because this is one metro that has been stable under the leadership of the ANC. I think, the Mzwandile Masina, who happens to be my homeboy, I think he's done well as mayor. He has been able to keep the coalition together. And I think that it also helped him that the parties that they are in coalition with are parties that they are likely to be, like-minded in terms of ideology. I'm talking here about the Pan-Africanist Congress and the AIC, and other parties, smaller parties. So I think that, the party that is going to emerge stronger is the ANC. And I think that we can look at other parties also like the PSC, the IFP, the AIC, and other parties. But I think overall the ANC should be able to have the plurality of votes in this municipality.
So who is the strong second then? Is it EFF, DA?
Look, the DA is likely to come second best, but I don't think that it would be invited to form the government. I think the EFF may, be tempted to go into a coalition with the ANC if it emerges stronger than the other parties. Because you must remember that in 2016, the EFF wouldn't be part of the government because of its issues with the then leader of the ANC, Jacob Zuma. They were vocal against him, and the EFF made sure that they stopped the ANC from forming a government in the city of Johannesburg. They stopped the ANC from forming the government in the city of Tshwane. So I think that there is a likelihood that you can see the EFF being part of the government. I think they would want to be part of the government because, being in government, you have access to so many things, being a member of the mayoral committee, there are perks that come with that. And the party benefits from that it's part of something that is happening. It's part of the governance of that particular municipality. Whether or not it will decide to go into a coalition with the ANC remains to be seen. But I don't think that the ANC will struggle in this particular metro to form a government because it already has parties that it has worked with and worked with very well. And those parties, I'm sure they would like to continue to be in government. The PAC, for example, would like to have a seat in government as a party that has got a very rich history, but voters haven't been as generous to the party as it would have expected them to be. So that they are part of the government gives them an edge. The same goes to the AIC. But as to whether they are going to be able to garner enough votes for them to be considered as coalition partners, that remains to be seen. This is proving to be a difficult election for parties that do not have resources, because in order for you to have resources, you have to deploy people on the ground for them to campaign for you. And if you've got a limitation in terms of resources, that would translate into that particular party not getting any votes as it would want to. Peter?
All right, let's look at two scenarios, and I just want you to take me through what the likely outcome might be. Scenario one is where there's a high voter turnout and that there are a lot of young people that have come through to vote on the day for some reason. And then scenario two is there's a very low voter turnout, huge apathy. What do those two scenarios produce?
Look, a high voter turnout traditionally, in this country is good for the ANC because The ANC has the largest voter base of all political parties in the country. You can look back to 1994 up to the last elections. It averages 60% of the voting population in the country, followed by a party that is the main opposition. The Nationalist Party got around 20% in 1994, and the DA, having taken that base, has been consistently around the 20% mark, fluctuating, but around that ballpark of 20%, and the remaining 20% is for smaller parties. So if you get a high voter turnout, it just simply means that more people are going to go out and vote for the ANC. But if you also get a high voter turnout of young people, that just simply means that the EFF is going to stand in a much better position, because it's a party that's led by young people. It's a party that young people generally identify with, particularly also because the ANC has had a problem with its youth league since Julius Malema incidentally was kicked out. There has been a lull in the youth league of the ANC, and the party is paying the price for that it lost a lot of traction with young people. But, there is now movement to get the youth league working again. The ANC is getting young people to go and energize other young people to come out and vote. So, a high voter turnout is good for the ANC. If young people are coming out to vote, that is good for the EFF generally. If there's a low voter turnout, it just simply means that the people who are dissatisfied the most are the people who are going to go out to vote, the people who want change. So a low voter turnout, in my view, would be bad for the ANC.
Talking about the ANC, perhaps we can end where we started. Deputy President Mabuza imploring the citizens of Ekurhuleni, saying, we have made mistakes, but please help us cross the line and get this majority. And I just wonder, since 2016, we've had the State Capture Commission and a plethora of senior ANC leaders caught in corruption scandals, including, at the time of greatest need, the PPE scandals that were endless. Are the people on the ground going to say, we forgive you for all that for the time being and we will vote for you? Or will they look at this and just say, I can't in good conscience vote for a party that's been in the news every week for one thing or another?
Here is how the business of news becomes interesting. Is that people sometimes forget what they had 6 months ago, let alone what they read in the newspapers or saw on television or heard on the radio 3 years ago. People tend to focus on what they have to deal with at this particular moment. And the ANC has a big machinery that is able to penetrate township areas and visit as many people as possible. So when the ANC has come to you and there are people who are talking to the voters and saying, yes, we've made mistakes, this is what we're doing. And also remember that there is a sense of, whether it's perceived or real, a sense of renewal in the ANC with Cyril Ramaphosa. They've been able to get people like Thabo Mbeki, who's never been on the campaign trail since he lost power in 2008. They got people like Kgalema Motlanthe, former ANC Secretary General and Deputy President, and one-time President of the Republic. People like, the former Deputy President of the Republic, Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, and many others. So this gives a sense to voters that the ANC has changed. It's not the ANC of Jacob Zuma, for instance, at least as people perceive it. So I don't think that the past problems, state capture and all those things are going to be a big factor in people making a decision as to who they are going to vote for. However, there are people who have been put off by all those things and have decided a long time ago that they are going to vote differently. And I don't think that those people can be persuaded to vote for the ANC. I think those are people that the ANC has lost completely, and they're going to continue finding other political parties. But in terms of the ANC's machinery being able to galvanize people, sending their president all over the country, he's on television all over the country, you listen to the radio, you hear him, that is likely to get people out to vote for the ANC. I don't think that the ANC is going to perform that worse off compared to 2016, where it was dealing with the problems and the scandals and the negative publicity that the former President Jacob Zuma was getting. This time around, even in the media, one sometimes get a sense that the media is much more accommodating of Cyril Ramaphosa as president, and that translates to people trusting him more on the ground, even though they see the problems that are on the ground. But they still believe that with Cyril Ramaphosa at the helm, the party is changing for the better. Whether that message lands completely remains to be seen after the election. Peter.
And we'll certainly have to wait and see, but I'm sure we'll be having many conversations about your home metro. Makhosini Mgitywa, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for your time. All right, that's Makhosini Mgitywa talking about his hometown. He's born and bred in Ekurhuleni. He lives there still. And he says that, look, the ANC probably going to get the lion's share of the votes. But will they cross that 50% mark? That's the magical question. And we'll have to wait and see. A lot has happened since 2016. And who knows what will happen next week.